Greetings, saxophone people. Today in this video I'm going to discuss a requested topic which will be the Otto Link family of vintage mouthpieces. So I'm going to start at the Tone Master. Alright, we're going to go Tone Master, and then we're going to go, Tone Master, the New York Tone Master, and then we're going to go to the early Super Tone Masters known as the Doublerings, and then the Transitional pieces, and then into the Florida models. Doublerings, no USA Super Tone Masters, USA Super Tone Masters, early Babbitt pieces, and the like. And we have, we'll talk about the metal pieces, and we'll talk about the hard rubber pieces for what I have. And we'll also discuss a few of the brass Dukoff models. So we're going to go through the range. We're going to talk about the details, the identifying characteristics, some of the playing characteristics, the design changes, and maybe we'll get some play test in there too. So welcome on the journey, and thanks for watching. And now we're going to move on and take a look at the transition from New York to Florida. So at some point, I can't remember, I'm not an expert on the history of it, but Ben Herod, a guy named Ben Herod, bought the Otto Link company and moved it to New York. Now, before he moved it to New York, I mean, I think it was somewhere in Freeport, Long Island, New York, or something like that. I can't remember. So there are a few different addresses, but eventually it ends up in New York. And Ben Herod's Otto Link company, he bought the company and a bunch of stock, I believe. So some of the old mouthpieces, well, they weren't that old, right? But the mouthpieces that were in current production, which are these double rings here, he bought those too and finished them in Florida, and he finished them differently. And here is one of those. Okay, so here we go. Look at that, long bite plate. Okay, so this is a New York blank. It's got the long bite plate, the same shank, different font. See that? Look at that font. This change may scare you. Hold on to your chair. There it is. D76, D, large D, small numbers, G23, large numbers. Look at that. That's a difference, a notable difference. We should lock that down and just hold on to our hats. Big difference. Okay. So, different font, but still has a long bite plate. And there's your stamp, 5-star. Is it the same size? Let's see. Yeah, kind of is. Close enough anyway. Samely enough for me. And look at that. Registered U.S. Patent Office, long gone. No registered U.S., it's gone. It's just wiped. Sorry, we're not registering anything. See you later. So you got your serial number, right? And like here, they tell you that that's a serial number. Here, they're just like, if you don't know it's a serial number by now, then you're confused. Registered U.S. patent, no. Okay? We don't need no stinking patent office by this time. And here we got super, and it's still the specially super, sarcastically super Tone Master, with a long bite plate, table stamp. Oh, what's missing here? Otto Link Co. ... New York, New York is all gone. So we are now being made in Florida, but we don't feel like telling you that because, frankly, who cares where it's being made? We're making them. There it is. Table stamped. Now look at this finish. That has got to be one of the most beautiful finishes. Very nice. Look at that thin tip rail, thin side rails. Now, I have to tell you, as somebody who's restored a ton of mouthpieces, and I call it restored because I don't just reface and open them up. And when I started in this game doing that, you know, I did not take, people used to want to send me mouthpieces. They, I have an Otto Link Tone Master. It's a 5. I want to open to an 8. Will you do that? And I would just say no, I won't, unless it's damaged. If it's a perfectly playing mouthpiece at 5, I'm not going to mess with it. It's an antique. So I call it restoration because, you know, I'm just trying to get them back to where they're supposed to be. Sometimes I'll modify them and make them bigger if that's, you know, indicated, if it's a good idea to do that. But, you know, here's the thing. From a restoration and refacing point of view, this thin finish, thin side rails, thin tip rails,
This is not even that thin compared to what some people do now. People got carried away with this, and some people are like, it's got to be razor thin. It's like a hairline, and they think that's going to make a mouthpiece play better because it teases the bright out of the mouthpiece. Well, it kind of does, but it teases something else out of them too, which is the chirp. They squeal and they chirp and they scream. If you put a thin tip rail, thin side rails and thin tip rail on a larger facing mouthpiece, I mean, that thing is just going to wail and scream with those high frequencies. The slightly thicker tip rail actually acts as a buffer against those kind of frequencies. It works really well in these pieces because they're small sizes. Okay, hear that clearly. These are small facing mouthpieces, so that thin tip and everything pulls the bright out of a normally kind of dark situation. It's a trick of the trade, but if you put this kind of facing finish on larger mouthpieces, you may have problems. And people do, but some people just don't notice. They say, it doesn't play well, I don't know why. Well, that's why. Anyway, this is a very nice finish, and look at that, okay? This thing's got a bit of baffle, but it's rollover. There it is. You can just kind of, yeah, it's a little hard to see in the light here. There you go, okay. See that? Now we're starting to get a little bit of rollover. So Ben Herod is saying, we need these things to speak a little bit more. Okay? We need these things to buzz and speak a little bit more. We're going to put a little baffle in there. Someone's starting to wake up to that idea. There it is. Okay? So this got some baffle. But this is still what we call a transitional piece. All right? It's a New York blank with a long bite plate and a tiny bit of baffle. Now we're going to go to the transitional. I'm going to use the same reed. This is the transitional piece. It's still well, you can't see. There's not enough light on this setup. It's got the 5-star on the table, right? Like the 6 on the table and that. This has 5-star on the table. This is the G23 transitional double ring with a long tooth plate, but no New York stamp. All right. Wow! Listen to the difference. Jeez. So, I remember that this mouthpiece just played incredibly well. I mean, this is great. This mouthpiece is like, and you know, it's that facing too. And it's got a bit of baffle, just a minor rollover situation, a minor situation. Wow, this mouthpiece is super fun to play. And now we'll move one step forward. And here is a true Florida double ring. All right, this is a really cool piece. This is one of my personal players sometimes. This is a Florida double ring. Look at that. Oh my God, it's a 9-star. That is more special than a special order. I mean, this was like, someone said, I have to play the biggest thing on earth, send me a 9-star, make me a 9-star. They probably paid extra for it, and that's what it is. They're extremely hard to find. Now, it's not as big as you might think. It's more like a 7 by today's standards. But some of them might be bigger. I can't guarantee that, but I think many of them aren't. 7's already huge for this time period. Anyhow, this is a Florida, okay? There's our big font serial number, K30. You will find a lot of K whatever mouthpieces in this. They made a lot of Ks for whatever reason. I've seen a bunch of them. There's your sarcastically super tone master. No New York stamp. But whoa, this is confusing. There's no table stamp. It's stamped over here. See the previous? We had our 5-star and 6 on the table. Now Florida's, they're stamped on the side. Okay? So things are starting to change. However, in this tip finish, it's a little bit different. This one's got a thicker tip rail. Notice that, right? Now, maybe it's just been played a lot. Sometimes those tip rails get beat down from being played a lot. I mean, I think that's also part of the case here. But I think it was also just made with a thicker tip rail. And maybe someone was a little bit smart in the Otto Link company. Maybe somebody was a little bit smart about larger facings and the thickness of the tip rail. This is not a small facing for Link at that time. Now look at that. It's got a bit of baffle to it. It's a rollover. See that? Can I get some light on that? Where are we here? Am I in the light? Am I out of the light? There we go. There we go. See that? You're getting some slightly significant rollover baffle up here. There we are. See that? Here's your little rollover at the tip. Okay? It's not really a big baffle, but it's a bit of rollover. Okay? And does it make a difference? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, did we look at the chambers? Did we compare the chambers? I didn't really do that. This piece is a little bit grubby, isn't it? I'm revealing my lack of oral hygiene. So let's just take a quick look before we continue with this piece, and we'll look at the chambers. We looked at the tone master. This is the tranny. Okay. So tone master on the left, transitional on the right. Well, look at that. That's interesting. They look pretty similar, to be honest. The tranny on the right may even have a slightly longer cutout for the chamber, but it may or may not have a higher floor. That I don't know. So here's the tranny, right, the 4-star, and then we'll take a look at the other one, which is a slightly later super tone master. Can we get some light in there? Let's see. Oh, we can kind of see. Can't say it focuses great, but yeah. What's interesting, well, this is really interesting. Oh, there we go. What's really interesting, which it's just hard for me to get the light in there to see, the transitional one, the milling for the chamber is longer, and it starts further forward. You see, if I put them here, you can see, if I put the angles down here, you can see the one on the left where the milling starts, the one on the right, you can't even see it. Okay, it's much further back into the chamber. Let's see, let's compare the length. So tone master on the left, tranny on the, well, see, this is just variance, right? You just don't know which way they're going. The tone master one is also further back than the tranny. So they're a little bit, hit or miss. You just don't know, where were they going? What were they doing? I don't know. And so then we'll compare the later period New York double ring to the Florida. And now the later period 6 milling starts actually further forward than Florida. So Florida is also further back, but in the Florida, well, they look to be about the same length. Okay, but there's some kind of a difference. And now we take a look at the transitional Florida compared to the true Florida. And what do we see? Well, it's a little hard to see because the true Florida is a little bit too grubby to see the cutout. But take my word for it, I'm looking at them and they look, let me see for a second. Oh, that's why you can't see it. So, it's a little dirty in there because the one on the right has been played a lot more recently. It's pretty nasty. I didn't clean this mouthpiece. Just pretend you didn't see that. Just, it's like, it's seasoning. That's what it is. It's flavoring and seasoning. The one on the right, one of the reasons you can't see it is because it's not so evident. It's actually very subtle. They don't have a big milled out chamber like you see here. It's actually just smoothly. It starts at the back of the floor and doesn't mill it out really more deeply than the chamber already was. So anyway, back to this. You got your side stamp, you got your 9-star, no New York stamp, no patent office, and look, short bite plate. Okay, that's the big change. That's the one that gets everybody really, really excited. Oh my God, look at that bite plate. The earlier ones are just huge. The new improved Florida Tone Master has realized that, well, people have become more responsible with their teeth, I think is what it is. They're genetically, they've improved. Their dental situation is less wild and out of control, and they've decided they don't need to protect us so thoroughly from our own mouthpieces. Why not try this piece? Here we're getting into the real Floridas. This was the 9-star I showed you. This 9-star, I don't think it's going to play with this reed. It's bigger. So we're going to go back to this smaller reed. And I'm going to put a Florida ligature on this. So it's got this thing, you know, it kind of spreads. It's a little bit bright, I guess, but it kind of spreads out, and it just it does a thing to the sound, which mouthpieces tend to do. There's another reason that I kept this one around. That's really, really good. It's really good. It's really about, you know, for me, I mean, I love the sound of these, but it's a question of when and, you know, can I find the right reed to play on them and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's not a small facing, so, you know, it's just normal size, but, you know, for me, it's maybe bigger than I would normally play, but Links, you know, they have their requirements for what kind of reed you can put on them. I mean, the early ones especially, you know, they're not super bright mouthpieces, so you have to toy with those reeds. So the next one we're going to look at, we're going to start to look at the real. So we have more examples of the true Florida mouthpiece, and so we'll look at this one. This is a wonderful mouthpiece, a very interesting and rare piece. This is a true Florida. Okay, so I think it's a slightly later Florida than the other one. You know, it's got the short bite plate. There's your big font serial number. No, oh, look at that. Facing S.A. Don't ask me. I don't know. I don't know what S.A. is it. The only name that came to mind is a repair guy in New York named Cy Appel, but it's probably someone else's facing. I don't know. Maybe someone can tell me in the comments if they have an idea who S.A. is and whose facing that is. I would be interested. It's about a 6, I think. It's not a huge mouthpiece, but it's an unusual facing. It's extremely short and unusual curve. No New York stamp, no Florida stamp, no nothing. Super Tone Master. This is the later, you know, Florida Super Tone Master standard Super Tone Master blank. Okay. Wonderful tip rail finish. Look at that tip contour. Let me see if I get some. Figure out how to use my light here. There we go. Well, it's a little hard to see because it's lost all its plating. So, but look at that. Look at that baffle. Okay, it's starting to get. Now we're starting to get like into the baffle territory. Now we're like, all right, we're serious. We demand brightness from these mouthpieces. Look at that rollover. That's a nice. Can I get there? Yeah, that'll do it. Thank you, camera. Okay. Good. Now we got some brightness. Getting that baffle starting to come out. It's starting to get sort of imposing rollover baffle. It's still pretty small in this piece, but well, actually, it's like when I look at it in light myself, it looks kind of big to me. But on the camera can only pick up so much because you can only see that based on reflection. Yeah, you can see it. You kind of see it. Yeah, we can imagine it. I can see it in person. All right, there you go. Okay, it's got some baffle. All right, and a wonderful tip finish. Still got the scooped out sidewalls. There's your, now you can see it a little bit better. There's your milled out chamber. It's not as deeply milled out as the earlier ones, but it's still there. Okay, there's your baffle. Look at that. Look at it from that angle. You see a pretty big baffle, right? There you go. This mouthpiece is actually really, really quite bright. I mean, this is not a dark mouthpiece. The double rings, the Florida double rings, I mean, they are not dark. They just have a specific way that they respond. And so this is the ligature now. I didn't tell you about this. I'm forgetting. Okay, so the New York double ring. This has this ligature. Okay, these are the ligatures that go with them. Oops, I put it on backwards, which is a terrible thing for a real saxophone player to do. There it is. Look at that. No longer do they have the vertical lines, right, of the Tone Master ligature. They have now switched to the new and improved cross-hatching, right? For the people who really drool and slobber and blow a bunch of spit, so on the gig they can just grab it with their fingers, you know, it doesn't slip. It's a pretty good ligature. It's a little bit slightly thicker brass. This one looks like it's got some nickel plating on it. They're really actually wonderful ligatures when they're not worn out. So that's the Super Tone Master New York look. Still got a chimney, right, around the screw there. Super Tone Master ligature. Great ligature. Hard to find. Most people don't know what those are. The New York Super Tone Master ligature. Now, this is the Florida ligature. Okay, this is the Florida double ring ligature. See, cross hatching, slightly different way that it's crafted. The metal to me feels a little bit thinner on the band than the New York. Okay, and this one actually goes with that SA facing mouthpiece. So I'll put that back on. All right, there it is, and that's how it would work. Now, what do we got here? This is the SA piece. Let's see if we can play the SA facing. Now this is a real Florida double ring, okay? Straight up Florida double ring. Wow. Okay, so I played it before and I thought, well, that was weird, you know. I struggled with the facing before, and now with this reed, which is normally like kind of dark on the others, I mean, this goes good on this. Jeez. Well, that's a revelation to me. That's the SA, straight up Florida double ring. And now we'll take a look at a nicer condition true Florida double ring. Oh, look at that. This is one of the minty ones I got over the years. Gorgeous mouthpiece. It's got all the gold plating. Wonderful. L15. And it's a 6, which is a good size for a double ring. And look at that. Nice finish. This is the original finish here. Look, beautiful. Not the super thin, you know, but they're thin enough, but they're just where they need to be. All right. This piece has a fair amount of baffle. Pretty a decent amount of material there at the baffle. You can see the milling area, but look, the overall the floor is just getting higher now. So it's not really so scooped out. The floor is just getting higher. This area here, okay. It's just getting higher, just slopes right down into that milled out area without being too huge, right? So if we looked at, you know, so here's the transitional one. I mean, you look at this, yeah, it's kind of similar, but it just, I can see with my eye, it's probably hard to tell in the video, but this area here is still just bigger, okay? And that's what gives you that larger chamber, less compact feeling. Here it's higher, floor is higher. And so that, I mean, that's this piece. Very nice example. Original condition. That's what they look like. We're gonna play the last double ring that I took out, which is a 6. 6 Florida double ring. dark one, I believe. The dark 3 that I was playing. All right, so that was the 6 Florida double ring, and now we are out of double ring territory. So next up is the No USA Florida.